So I'm going to be talking about the beast system, and let me say from starters that there are a number of nations that have signed up to the beast system. They are behind schedule, and they are being pressured, and especially coming out of the World Economic Forum, the 56th summit, right? The 56th summit of the WEF, World Economic Forum, which was held in Davos, Switzerland. There are a number of takeaways, and they have reinforced their positions on a number of issues. I will just mention a few, and then I will go to this very important matter, which is a comprehensive sort of picture of this beast system, what it looks like currently, and what it will look like when it is rolled out, so that we in Jamaica, and let me just say this, Jamaica is a signatory to the beast system. However, the Lord will be allowing certain things to happen this year, going into next year, that will cause Jamaica to move away from the beast system. And I'm now speaking prophetically, but I can tell you that that's what's going to happen. So this is a word of warning to those leaders who are sold to the beast system, and you are deciding that you're not going to back down because you have already taken the people's money, the multilateral agencies and so on, and you are sworn, you also got your bit out of it too, and you have signed these agreements and covenants, and you are going in full steam ahead, as it were, because you are already sworn allegiance to the beast. You are going to be removed. Okay, let me say it one more time. You are going to be removed. God is going to remove you and replace you with righteous men and women who are prepared to do his bidding, so that this nation of Jamaica will not bow to the beast. A word to the wise is sufficient. So you can try all you want to try. And I'm speaking to political leaders especially. Yes, you think that you are going to have your way. No, you're not going to have your way. The Lord is going to use a number of measures, apart from pestilence and disasters, which you will try to capitalize on. But the big changer is going to be external intervention. God is going to use external intervention to literally prize, and I'm using that word deliberately as the Lord will give, to prize you out, because some of you have embedded yourselves in different seats of power and authority, and as far as you are concerned, oh, no one can move you. Well, we shall see what we shall see. Then there is the shaking. In fact, I had a very interesting experience. I can't give the details because of the sensitivity of it. In broad daylight while moving, and I'm not going to say because maybe the person who was at the brunt of it is listening. I don't know if this individual would want to share the experience. I really wanted to call the person this morning, but the morning was so hectic I couldn't get the chance. So, but I'll try. But right, so while moving, and I'm just going to say moving, I'm speaking in parable. The person got an open vision. The person got an open vision. I suspect the person is listening now. An open vision. So frightening was the open vision in broad daylight while we are moving. I'm just saying that. Moving. Moving means literally moving. Yeah. And so it was like, we asked, what happened? What happened? And the person began to describe the open vision. A massive shaking of Jamaica. Massive shaking. And I'm talking about in broad daylight while we were moving. I'm just using moving for I don't want you to get into our business. But it was ministry moments in terms of assignments. Okay? While we were going to from one assignment to the next, so to speak. So physically moving, along the road. Let me just give you a little bit more information in that regard. But while that was taking place, the open vision took place. So scary was it that when the individual who received it, who was in close proximity to me, right? I thought something happened. I thought something happened to him, meaning something bad happened. Maybe like a wasp stung the person or something like that, right? I just think. So when I ask, what happened? What happened? And the person began to describe the thing. So Jamaica, right there. And it was significant that the Lord would have allowed us, three of us, in that setting, that God would visit one. He couldn't visit me with that open vision because of the role that I was playing at the time. My eyes must have, had to be open and I had to be alert. So the other person was the one who got the open vision. But I'm just saying the Lord would have allowed that to happen to once again remind us, because we were discussing some critical matter as well as we were going along. Critical matters re the nation, critical matters in terms of what God is saying, and some of the must do, some stuff that must be done now. Some of them I can't tell you because of the sensitive nature. Okay? But that shaking would have come right there in the midst of it for the Lord to say to us, you don't have much time. Whatever you need to do, do it. Don't delay. I believe that is the reason he allowed it to happen when the three of us were together. And in fact, those other two are my prayer partners, right? Covenant Prayer Group prayer partners. So it was really significant what happened, and it's a wake-up call. So I'm just simply saying to those political leaders who think they are going to push and shove the beast system down the throats of the people, it's not going to work. Let me say it another way. It not gonna work. It not gonna work. Try, you will, fail, you must. Me not asking you. May I tell you, watch what God is going to do. Some of you who are in power now, you're going to find yourself out of power. Some of you are going to have to run out of the island. Me not asking you. Some of you are going to be handcuffed. By the authorities. Watch what God is going to be doing. Alright? So enough said. So back to the situation. So coming out of the Davos 56th summit, there are some takeaways. I won't get into it, but I'm just going to give you the subheadings. Some takeaways re geopolitics. And of course, have you noticed how common that word is becoming? But it was already common on this platform, wasn't it? But now you're hearing just about everybody talking about geopolitics, right? So geopolitics, okay? And geo there having to do with places and regions, the political happenings, decisions and plans, etc., that influence politics and governance across borders and territories. That's geopolitics. Okay? So geopolitics. So they made some firm commitment re geopolitics. Also macroeconomics and market. That's 3M. Two M's, MEM, macroeconomics and markets. They also made decisions, telling decisions re artificial intelligence, that's AI, and also energy, matters having to do with energy. Yes, energy and defense. I'm going to repeat, the key takeaways were focused or centered on geopolitics, macroeconomics and markets, artificial intelligence, energy and defense. So the beast will be zeroing in on these matters. Geopolitics, that's where you get one world order or one world government. Geopolitics. How can we pull everybody together under one umbrella? Macroeconomics and market. How can we control the market, determining who buy and who can sell? Okay? Macroeconomics and market. So the big picture, but under the macroeconomics, obviously, they will manage the micro. Okay? And what are they going to use to do all of that? Geopolitics and macroeconomics, artificial intelligence. But not just that. If you notice, among the five, artificial intelligence is at the center, because on both sides of artificial intelligence, you have geopolitics, macroeconomics, and markets, and below that, you have energy and defense. So AI is going to be that fulcrum, that common thread that glue that will hold all of these together. So that's where things are going. So great attention, more than ever, is going to now be placed on AI solutions, pushing AI so that AI will have greater leverage over geopolitics, macroeconomics and markets, energy, and of course defense. Listen carefully. Those of you who are able to record it, you had better record it. And the caption here is dialectic of dominion. I'm going to say that one more time. Dialectic of dominion, identity, surveillance, and control. I'm going to say it one more time. Dialectic of dominion, identity, surveillance, and control. When most people imagine the beast system, they picture something sudden, a dramatic flip of a switch where the Antichrist unveils a fully formed global control grid. Holy Scriptures give a different impression, though. What Holy Scriptures tell us is that a system that already has scaffolding already has rails, already has the plumbing. This system, as we read Holy Scripture, we're seeing that it already has a scaffolding. And scaffolding, as you know, those persons who are familiar with constructions, you need to get up to higher points, be it of a building edifice or a structure. You use the scaffolding to hold workmen and to facilitate material so that work can be done above ground safely and in an efficient way. So we are seeing that the scaffolding is in place, the rails already are being put in place, and the plumbing is also installed so that when the final authority arrives, the mechanism is ready. So when we read the Bible, we see that. And that's why the most important question really is not, has Revelation chapter 13 happened yet? But rather, are the enabling systems being built now? So that's the question. The question is not whether or not Revelation 13 has happened yet, but rather, are the enabling systems being now built? In recent years, the world has accelerated into a new governance paradigm that increasingly treats human autonomy as a problem to be managed, and technology, especially AI, as the tool to manage it. This aligns cleanly with what is described as a classic Hegelian dialectic. And what is this? Well, the Hegelian dialectic is divided into three main parts of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So that's thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. What is this? Thesis really is the problem. What's the problem? Human autonomy and decentralized life. So human autonomy and decentralized life, that's the problem. The antithesis is the reaction. Right? There are some who would say antithesis, but antithesis, and that is the reaction. What's the reaction? AI as threat and savior, and this caused what is called engineered tension. So that's the antithesis or antithesis, and the synthesis is the solution. What is the solution? Managed AI plus human submissions via centralized controls. Now, this isn't a claim that every technologist is evil. I'm going to make that clear. I am not saying that every technologist and technology is evil, or that every innovation is demonic. Let me say that one more time. I am not by any stretch of the imagination saying or suggesting that every scientist, technologist, or piece of technology is evil, or that every innovation is demonic. I'm not saying that. Many of these developments have legitimate uses. The issue is the direction in which they are going and how they are being used and will be used in time to come. The issue is the way crises and fear are used to normalize a system where participation in society becomes conditional. I'm going to say that one more time. The issue is the direction in which technology is going and how it is being used to control and eventually, in many instances, seek to replace human beings and to enslave us. It's also the way in which crises and fear are used to normalize a system where participation in society becomes conditional. That's a big problem. So let us look a little bit at what can be described as phase one, which is the thesis. And what is the thesis? As was said earlier, human autonomy and order. The baseline condition assumes people can live with meaningful freedom. Meaningful freedom, which manifests in personal responsibility, local governance, moral accountability, organic creativity and commerce, as well as the ability to move, to speak, and to transact without constant permission. The public narrative is people are capable, rational, and in control, though flawed. But over the last decade or so, institutions increasingly emphasize the quiet counter-narrative. And what is that? That humans are biased. That human beings are emotional. That human beings are misinformed and dangerous if left unchecked. I'm going to say that one more time. The counter-narrative that has been cultivated over the past decade, and especially in recent times, is that human beings are biased, emotional, misinformed, and dangerous if left unchecked. And that sets up the pivot. And what is the pivot? If humans can't be trusted to govern themselves, then governance must be automated, centralized, and enforced, not by persuasion, but by systems. So that's phase one. Phase two, which is the antithesis or antithesis, AI as threat and savior. And what happens in this phase is that there is what is described as an engineered tension, where AI is positioned, and when we say AI, we are talking about artificial intelligence, is positioned as the threat. Also, deep fakes and what is described as reality collapse also is introduced. Job displacement becomes a reality. Predictive surveillance also is introduced. Bias and discrimination at different scales also come into play. And talk and the phenomenon of misinformation now is used to deceive and ultimately to destroy democracy, because if it can be proven that with the freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of making choices, as long as those choices do not infringe on the justiciable rights of others, if it can be proven that that is not the best model, then of course democracy can be made to look like something or a concept that is unhealthy. And if it is unhealthy, if it does not facilitate human flourishing, then a new construct would have to be put in place. And so democracy would be destroyed, and another form of governance would put forward. Very often it is really totalitarianism, right? Dictatorship, one that is guided by autocracy, right? Autocracy. So misinformation is the tool that is used where that is concerned. But what about AI as the savior? The objective here is that they would arrange things in such a way that AI is consulted to measure, to weigh, to allow, to disallow, and to rate. AI also would be consulted where optimization of policies is required, and also the allocation of resources. So for example, if there is a disaster, they are saying to the people that it is better to pass it through the system and allow AI to allocate resources rather than human beings, because human beings tend to be corrupt and they will not ensure that everybody receives. But if you were to allow AI to distribute the resources, then everyone would receive, right? Everyone would receive. Nothing could be further from the truth, because AI is controlled by the said human beings. And basically, whatever algorithm is prepared, AI has to follow those algorithms. Going on, also, promoting AI as savior would mean that they would also use it for many other things, such as automated fraud prevention, improve safety through real-time monitoring, and also devising and cultivating trust layers to verify truth and identity, so that if you are to go to a government facility to access resources, there would be different checks and balances that would be put in place, not managed by human beings, but by AI. And they are justifying this to say that AI is not corrupted, but human beings are corrupted. Nothing could be further from the truth. The dialectic trick is this: both sides are amplified by the same institutions. The public isn't meant to resolve the debate, only to become exhausted by it. In other words, we are not given the full information. For example, the general public is not given the opportunity to have discussions such as town hall meetings. We hear, look at the approach that they were taking with the so-called constitutional reform. And they go to a few places and they allow for participation, but on their terms. So persons who are not able to physically go to the location may join online, but they have a particular way of controlling your comments. And especially when you are making comments that are not in favor of what they are seeking to do, they simply block you or ignore you. The same thing happens in the town hall meetings. As soon as you begin to express your views, they want to curtail that. But at the same time, they give themselves all the time to make their case and basically limit the participation of the public. So that's really what that is about. Phase 3, synthesis, which has to do with managed AI plus human submission. Now, coming out of that situation, which I've just mentioned, phase 2, the antithesis, where there is not enough opportunity that is given for persons to fully understand what is happening, and more technology is taking over. With that comes fear, with that comes anxiety. Now, once the anxiety peaks, and this is where the synthesis comes in, that's manage AI plus human submission. Once AI peaks, the public is offered the reasonable middle or the reasonable solution. And what is that? Regulated AI. What is that? Centralized oversight bodies. And all of this now begin to play itself out in what is called biometric identity, digital wallets, digital IDs, and fancy word here now, algorithmic governance. Algorithmic governance. That is where governance more and more is left up to AI. So you won't get that opportunity to have one-to-one interface as you would normally do with human beings, but you will now have to handle or deal with machines. And the human beings are at a distance, so they are not available, generally speaking, to readily talk with you, resolve whatever the issues. You have to go through a system which with no human face to it. Okay, so that's really where they want things to go. Taking it further, also AI assisted law enforcement. So in terms of doing investigations, many of the investigations now are done from a distance, but then because of technology, the satellites and all of that, your smartphones and so on, they simply assess and analyze the data. And then they now make decisions. So by the time they swoop down on you, the authorities come on you, they would have already analyzed data, your digital footprint, so to speak, your activities, and then they take whatever action is necessary. Also, not just AI assisted law enforcement, but what is also called AI filtered truth interference or infrastructure. I'm going to say that one more time. AI filtered truth infrastructure. Let me say it one more time. AI filtered truth infrastructure. What is that? So now, what is considered to be truth is no longer standardized according to the precepts and statutes of God, according to what was originally true, but rather a new form of truth would be put forward. And because of how the system is organized, if you do not subscribe to the parameters or the criteria of that system, you are literally passed off or judged or labeled as someone who is not true, someone who is fake, someone who is a terrorist, someone who is an antagonist. What are some of the truth? For example, two men can't get married, but the system, the truth infrastructure, says that two men can get married. So if you are of the view that two men can't get married and should not get married, once you are picked up on that system, you are seen as a problem or a threat. Another example, the whole matter of not just, let me give you another regular issue, this matter of climate change. And if you speak to the fact that climate change, as they are putting it forward, is not what it is, but that God is the one who made the earth, God is the one who controls weather, even though human beings interfere with weather, but he has the final say. And if there's a problem with weather, what we need to do is to repent, turn away from our evil practices, stop polluting the environment, stop worshiping false gods, and so on. And if you do that, you will see better weather conditions facing you, and so on and so forth, in your nation. If you were to be of such a view, you also would be seen as a proponent of misinformation, and the system would log you as someone who is promoting falsehood, and you'll be locked out of the system and other actions taken against you. So that's an example of it. If you're against the NIDS, for example, and let's say we had that AI filtered truth infrastructure in Jamaica, the moment you say you're against the NIDS, you are blacklisted because you're not speaking and embracing what has been normalized as truth in your society. So that's an example of AI filtered truth infrastructure. So it doesn't matter what the church says, especially the church that is aligned to the true and living God. No, if it does not subscribe, for example, there are many gods, and you are free to worship any god you want to. If you say no, there's only one true God, again, you are going to be blacklisted in that system, and you are marginalized and ostracized. So I hope you have got the picture. Running along. Now, having said that, putting that together in terms of the synthesis, humans would now remain under supervision. Choices, to a certain extent, would remain, but within boundaries. Freedom, to a certain extent, would remain, but would become conditional. Let us take it further. What does AI-driven surveillance look like? AI-driven surveillance is not a single technology. It is not a single policy or system. It is what is described as a converging architecture. Let me say that one more time. It is what could be described as a converging architecture. One that integrates identification. One that integrates classification. Behavioral monitoring, that is the monitoring of behavior. Narrative control and economic enforcement into what can be described as a unified framework of governance. Unlike traditional surveillance, which merely observes, AI-driven surveillance increasingly decides, predicts, and enforces. This marks a historic shift, as power is no longer exercised primarily through laws and institutions, but through systems that operate continuously, invisibly, and automatically. At the foundation of this system is facial recognition, which removes anonymity from public life. So in other words, you no longer are anonymous. Your privacy, that's gone. Cameras paired with AI algorithm can identify individuals in streets, ports, airports, stores, supermarkets, schools, at the bus stop, taxi stand, and events in real time. The stated justification for this kind of intrusion, right? This kind of intrusion is safety and efficiency. But safety for who? Efficiency for who? The functional result is that presence itself becomes a form of authentication, right? Movement through society is quietly transformed into a series of identity checks. Once deployed at scale, facial recognition allows authority to track not only where people go, but who they associate with how often they gather, whether their behavior deviates from normal. In a beast system trajectory, this provides the eye's constant visibility without the need for physical enforcement. Facial recognition is then reinforced by digital identity systems, which turn identity into a persistent, centralized credential required for participation in modern life. Digital IDs are increasingly used to access banking, healthcare, government services, education platforms, employment portals, and online accounts. While marketed as secure and convenient, these systems concentrate authority over access into a small number of gatekeepers. So authority is given to a small number of gatekeepers, and many of them are not honest individuals. Many of these people are corrupt. So in such a case, how would that make the society any safer? Crucially, once identity becomes digital, I'm going to say that one more time. Crucially, once identity becomes digital, it becomes conditional. Credentials can be updated without your knowledge, restricted without your knowledge, until you try to buy something, or you try to leave the island. All of a sudden you realize you are blocked. You're applying for a job, all of a sudden you realize you are blocked. Nobody said it to you. Then you now have to go and prove whatever they are accusing you of. They have already taken action. You don't know that they took action. You're now going to the bank. You don't know that they took action. They block you. And guess what? They block you without even asking you any question. And now you're trying to get your money. You can't get it. Now you have to go through a series of hoops to prove or to disprove. That's what it does. So it's high-handed and unilateral. So let's go back. Crucially, once identity becomes digital, it becomes conditional. Credentials can be updated, restricted, flagged, or revoked remotely. In practical terms, digital ID systems create the infrastructure by which individuals may be allowed to function or quietly be excluded from the society. So that is why I don't support the NIDS. I could never support it. I do not support the NIC. I could never support it. I know there are many out there who don't like me because of that, but I must tell the people the truth. I can't tell them what to do, but I'm going to tell them the dangers of the system. And then they make up their minds if they are going to use it. And also if they are going to enroll their children in it. Why would I enroll to such a system that is going to disadvantage me? Huh? I'm not stupid. Let us continue. Then there is what is called layered approach. Layered on top of identification is predictive policing and algorithmic risk assessment. So pause. Without even talking with the person, getting to know the person, you are going to use data by virtue of the calls that they make and places that they go and draw conclusions. Determine if this is a good person or a bad person. Really? Especially when you don't like the person. The person is not doing anything wrong. The person is an advocate, for example, like me. And then all of a sudden, you're going to now monitor my activities and see me as a threat. When you who are monitoring me, you are a greater threat than I am. And then you make a decision to lock me out of the system so I can't buy or sell. I will now have to prove that I am not a bad person. The devil is a liar. So layered on top of identification is what is called predictive policing and algorithmic risk assessment, which introduces classification as a governing principle rather than responding to crimes after the fact. AI systems analyze historical data, behavioral patterns or patterns of behaviors, locations and associations to determine who or what is high risk. Now, on the one hand, that is good. But on the other hand, it is bad, because no longer will persons be treated as innocent as being proven until proven guilty. Let me say that one more time. No longer will persons be treated as innocent until proven guilty, but rather, as soon as certain lines are crossed, the authorities swoop down on these people, not even giving them very often the chance to make their case, as we are seeing in many of the killings that have been taking place, plus other such activities. So this system is always abused. It was used, a similar system was used in the time of Nazi Germany, and we are seeing the system being used in a number of nations now. And it is disadvantaging a whole lot of people. It's being used in parts of China as well. These classifications are often opaque and unchallengeable, yet they increasingly influence law enforcement attention, surveillance intensity, and intervention thresholds. This shifts society toward a pre-crime model where suspicion is generated by data rather than action. So you have never killed anyone, but maybe you have made some postings that suggest that you're angry and whatever, and they decide to strike you preemptively, even without you actually committing a crime. That is what a system like this has been used to do, and is being used to do, and can be used to do. From a prophetic standpoint, this normalizes the idea that guilt, or at least restriction, can precede wrongdoing, eroding what is called due process and moral accountability. Surveillance extends beyond physical movement into the realm of speech and perception through AI-driven governance of information. Algorithms now determine what content is promoted, what content is suppressed, what content is labeled or removed across digital platforms. So take, for example, this presentation that I'm making. If we were in Jamaica to arrive at a place where the AI infrastructure, the AI truth infrastructure is in place, and total surveillance becomes normalized, then a presentation such as this would not stay online. In fact, it would be blocked even while it is taking place. And shortly, they would have the power also to remove me from a platform such as this. Yes, because of how skewed the law and the system would be. They are not interested in the people knowing the truth. So let us continue. Algorithms now determine what content is promoted, what content is suppressed, what content is labeled or removed across digital platforms. A sermon which is preached, and AI would say there are a number of so-called controversial words or phrases or points, and they just pull it, or they interrupt the sermon. You are listening on YouTube, viewing on YouTube, and all of a sudden the feed is gone, or whatever other platform. That is the kind of situation where people's, not AI, because AI is already programmed through the algorithm, and they just shut it down. While framed as necessary to combat misinformation or harm, These systems centralize narrative authority and redefine truth as something to be managed rather than discerned. So no longer are we allowed to process and contend with our viewpoints in the public space, but the authorities, i.e. the state, would determine what is true and what is not true. Over time, acceptable beliefs narrow, dissent becomes suspect, and ideological conformity is reinforced, not primarily by force, but by invisibility. What cannot be seen or shared effectively ceases to exist. And that's critical. So when you block the truth speakers, you block them from online, you block them from radio, you block them from newspaper, then it is only a matter of time before the message that they carry would cease to exist in the minds of the people, since it would no longer be available to the masses. And this capacity to filter reality itself is indispensable to any future system that demands allegiance. So if you don't like a man or a woman, you silence him. And that doesn't mean necessarily killing the person, but you just shut them down. They have no access or opening or avenue to share with the masses. And even where they meet in small groups, you harass them. So they are only confined to sharing with their own family in a closed space. Economic enforcement, that's economic enforcement, completes the loop through what are called CBDCs, that is central bank digital currencies. And that is why, for example, I have never supported CBDCs, and I will never support it. That's central bank digital currency. Why should I? Because that's not money. That's programmable. It's a programmable phenomenon. Not even money. They say programmable money, but that which can be programmed is not money. Money is a medium of exchange, and of course, which is manifested in the form of cash. That which can be handled, that which is tangible, that which is material, that which you can own. You can't own CBDCs. It's a figment of your imagination. It's artificial, it's virtual. So why would I want to own it when I really can't own it? It's almost like saying the metaverse. Satan is putting that forward as an alternative to the universe. The metaverse does not exist. It is artificial, it's virtual. And yet people buy, quote unquote, buy land in the metaverse. That's a lie. Continuing. So economic enforcement completes the loop through what are called CBDCs and so-called programmable money. Unlike cash, digital currencies can be monitored in real time and programmed with rules governing how, where, and by whom they may be used. Do you understand that? Digital currencies can be monitored in real time and programmed with rules governing how, where, and by whom they may be used. Transactions can be approved, restricted, delayed, or denied automatically based on compliance with policy or status within the system. While proponents emphasize efficiency and fraud prevention, the deeper implication is that commerce becomes conditional. The ability to buy or sell is no longer a neutral function of exchange, but a permission granted by the system. This aligns directly with the economic control described in Revelation 13, not symbolically but structurally. The public is further conditioned through biometric payment systems, which normalize body-based commerce. And what's that? Body-based commerce. What's that? Where fingerprints, palm scans, facial recognition, or other biological markers replace cards, replace wallets, replace identity, such as your driver's license. And transactions become inseparable. The body itself becomes the credential. That's it. Do you want your body to become the credential? So if you are to buy something, you now have to use your hand, pass your hand over a scanner in order to purchase something in Jamaica. Do you want that rather than having your money? You tell me, where is room for negotiation? How will you be able to bargain? Because the system is already set. If the thing that you're seeking to buy is $10, that's it, full stop. You can't negotiate it. It's either you take it or leave it. Then not to mention whatever they have on you, like your palm print, fingerprint, etc. Once you give it, that's it. If that system is hacked, someone else somewhere else can get access to those same palm prints. And now technology is of such that they make what are called sleeves. That's one of the fancy words they use. So they can easily use AI to print what is called a sleeve. And so when that sleeve is printed, they fit it on. So another person, let's say Johnny over there, who is not me, print a sleeve of my palm print and put it on his hand. It's like a glove, and you put it on. And can now go and do transactions on my behalf as if I did those transactions. You realize that? And there's nothing I can do to stop that. Because Johnny may be in Australia. Maybe in some part of Africa. I don't have access. Lo and behold, all of my money gone. And I'm at pains to prove that I am not the one who bought the pizza. I am not the one who bought the clothes or bought the liquor. These days they talk about Hennessy and so on, right? I'm not the one who took the plane. I never left Jamaica. But the record would show, yeah, that those transactions took place and that I authorized it using my palm when I didn't know. I don't know of such thing. So you see all of that happening. It is not a good system. It is the system of the beast. Let us continue. Now, having said all of that, where the body itself becomes the credential, this matters not only technologically, but also psychologically. It trains society to accept that access, movement, and commerce require physical submission to verification systems. Opting out becomes increasingly impractical. In other words, refusing to participate increasingly becomes impractical, socially inconvenient, or suspicious. In a beast system framework, this represents a critical step toward total integration of identity and obedience. All of these systems are increasingly embedded into what is called a smart city infrastructure. So you see the layers, right? You see the layers now, right? So this matter now of smart city, yes, where surveillance is no longer episodic but environmental. Everywhere you go, you are under surveillance in a smart city. Everything you do, including your very house, when you leave it, when you enter it, and you can also be tracked inside there. through the Wi-Fi, through your smartphone, through your television, through your refrigerator, through your stove, and such the like, your so-called smartwatch and such the like. Sensors, cameras, and AI analytics manage traffic, utilities, public safety, zoning, and crowd flow automatically. Access to certain areas, services, or transportation can be dynamically adjusted based on data inputs. Cities become self-regulating systems rather than neutral spaces. Governance shifts from laws applied equally to real-time management of behavior, where compliance is not enforced, not by confrontation necessarily, but by automated restriction. Control becomes ambient. What do I mean by that? Felt everywhere and nowhere at once. That's very interesting. Everywhere and nowhere. Control becomes ambient. So you are at the supermarket and there is a control mechanism there by view of the surveillance. So you are now going to buy piece of beef. In addition to that, you feel that you want some oxtail as well. Those things are now expensive, but I'm just using that. And you also want to buy aerosol and some other stuff. And then all of a sudden, through the integrated approach, they could say to you, no, you will not be able to buy the 2 pounds of steak or the 10 pounds because you have already exceeded your quota. Your quota of what? Carbon usage, your carbon footprint. So the transaction is rejected. So you have to take back out some of the stuff until you meet whatever the criteria are. So you may end up leaving that supermarket or that place with just a handful of items. And that's how it is. You want to buy gas for your car because you're not using EV. And you already bought 10 liters because they put a cap on how much you can purchase each week and by extension each month. But maybe you had a lot of running up and down to do, like say me. I have to go all over the place for missions and so on. So I have to buy more often than not. As soon as that quota is finished, you can't buy it. Because you go to the pump, and when you go there, the machines, most of them would be automated. They're not going to give you any fuel. So you basically have to park that car or that vehicle, and you have to find some other way to transport. So that's the kind of control we're talking about. It's like a movie I'm talking about, right? But that is really the kind of society that the beast wants to cultivate. So let us wake up and realize that. Let's run along. Finally, emerging brain-computer interfaces, that's BCIs, that's brain-computer interfaces. You see, the beast is not satisfied, in just controlling you or us from the outside. But the beast is now moving to also control us on the inside, our very thoughts. So this beast system is not something simple that you laugh at and you scoff at. The beast wants total control, controlling your very thought, your very mind. So let's go on. So what is called the BCIs, or the brain-computer interface, and the Internet of Bodies push surveillance past the external environment and into the human body itself. What do I mean by that? So you have what are called now medical implants, Neuralinks. So you talk with Elon Musk and he'll tell you about that. So medical implants, neural links, and biometric sensors promise therapeutic breakthroughs and enhanced capabilities. but they also introduce unprecedented risk of dependency and intrusion. Why do I need to consult a so-called smartphone? Right? To check my blood pressure and to tell me when to take tablet and when not to take tablet. And thanks be to God, I don't have a pressure problem or a hypertensive. I'm not. And I give God the praise and glory. But I'm just using that as an example. And so they are setting up a system where you can't even think for yourself. When technology interfaces directly with cognition, health, or neurological function, the boundary between person and system dissolves. From a prophetic perspective, this is the most sobering of the frontiers. A system that once monitored behavior is being programmed, is being developed to one day influence capacity, influence perception, and decision making. Taken together, these components form a cohesive architecture. AI-driven surveillance does not merely watch. It governs. It identifies. It classifies. It filters. It restricts and enforces through systems that operate continuously and impersonally. So it's not something that you can argue with. It's not something that you can say, wait. You made a mistake. No, the decision done make. You know how to go to central control. And when you go there, a whole heap of other people there too have problem. You saw what happened even during the COVID situation and during Melissa what happened. And while they were trying to push this digital thing, look at the many problems. When you go to the bank, what happens? The long lines and so on. And many times you are not able to have the problems resolved in the same day. You have to wait weeks. Yes, because decision done make. So it's like they shoot first and then ask questions later. This is not yet the beast system that is described in Revelation, but it is unmistakably the operational infrastructure or framework capable of ushering this system fully into place and sustaining it. The technology is being normalized now. The habits are being formed now. That's why they're targeting the young people and our children. And the moral assumptions, safety over freedom, efficiency over conscience, compliance over conviction are being established now. I repeat, the moral assumptions, safety over freedom. So as long as you are safe, even if freedoms are taken away, not a problem, because they put safety over freedom. So people will give up their freedom in order to be safe. That doesn't make sense. When you can actually address the problem without interfering with my freedom. As we are saying in Jamaica, fix the family. The problem of crime and violence has to do with the breakdown of family and the allocation of resources because of corruption. Yes? There are some other factors in terms of the education system, but if you fix the family, you will fix corruption ultimately. You will also deal with matters of law and order and all of those things. Everything stems from the family. But no, they don't want to fix the family. They are trying to do all manner of things, including taking away your freedoms and my freedom, to say, oh, we are going to be safe. No, because the very same persons who are the enforcers, they themselves are corrupt. Not all of them, but most of them, many of them. And they abuse the power given to them. So they are even more dangerous than the people they claim to be protecting us from. Don't you realize that? So, moral assumptions, of safety over freedom, efficiency over conscience, compliance over conviction are now being established. The danger is not that these systems exist, but that they are being assembled right before our very eyes, and before we realize it, they are going to just be rolled out like that, if we do not speak up and speak out and put a stop to it. Now, what happens when all of these systems merge, forming what is called the convergence? Individually, each domain is explainable. Together, they look like a blueprint. For example, facial recognition identifies you in public. It doesn't matter how many people are there on the street or at the stadium or in a huge crowd. Facial recognition identifies you. Digital ID authenticates you for services. Predictive policing classifies you as safe or risky. AI governance filters what you can see and say. Did you hear that? AI governance filters what you can see and say. And as I pause there, the disconcerting thing about that is anywhere you are, there's no safe space. So you are in the church and you speak, the filtering is applied and decisions are taken. At work, in the public space, etc. The all-seeing, so-called all-seeing eye. CBDCs, or what is called programmable money, condition and control transactions. Biometric payments normalize body-based commerce. Smart city infrastructure manages movement and access. Brain-computer interface, that's BCIs, and Internet of Bodies move the boundary inside the person. So you're not only governed from the outside, but also from the inside. And that is why they'll be able to literally read your mind, predict your behavior. Now add a global shock to all of that, such as war escalation, cyber attacks on banking, a new pandemic, or mass disinformation panic. And you can hear the synthesis being offered. We need one trusted system. We need to verify identity. We need safer money. We need real-time monitoring. We need AI to keep the peace. And that is called the dialectic of dominion. So you cause a problem now, a massive problem. And then now you run ahead and say, we need one system that can be trusted. We need to verify identity at the click of a button. We need safer money. We need real-time monitoring. We need AI to keep the peace. You hear that? Not Jesus to keep the peace, AI. So now, what should born-again believers in Christ do in this developing situation instead of panic or apathy? Obviously, the goal is not fear. It's not fear. The goal is discernment. So instead of fear, we now should strive for discernment. Refuse the lie that safety requires surrendering conscience. Build what is called spiritual resilience now, because pressure always comes before compliance. I'm going to say that one more time. Build spiritual resilience now, because pressure always comes before compliance. Teach your family what convenience trades really cost. So it is convenient to do online banking. It's convenient to use the cards and the debit cards and whatever. But at what cost? support privacy and civil liberty safeguards where possible, because systems can be designed to limit abuse. Keep the gospel message of the kingdom of God, the gospel message of Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, as outlined in Holy Scriptures. Promulgate it far and wide. Ensure that everyone hears the gospel message, because in and through the gospel message is truth, is power, is life. The beast system will be at its core a worship system, a system which requires allegiance and submission. The church doesn't need to go high tech. What the church needs to do is to make sure as many people as possible are receiving the gospel message, that we are spending more time to teach, to empower, to sensitize, to witness and evangelize. Because certainly Jesus the Christ, Son of the living God, is coming back. He has already made provision to protect us. Some of us, of course, will face persecution, even death, but not all of us. And when the time is right, he will return to rescue this entire earth. Until then, we must not bow. Until then, we must continue to go out into the byways and edges and promulgate the gospel message. We must continue to pray like we have never done before. We must continue to support each other and leave the rest to God. 1 Thessalonians 4 verse 17 tells us, "Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And thus we shall always be with the Lord." May the Lord bless us as we govern ourselves accordingly.